Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have covered partially the 1960s and 1980s, so logic dictates we look into 1970s. If the 1960s was the birth of new music and new meanings, the 1980s were about being grandiose and bombastic. The decade that preceded it was the time of experimentation. This was the time when the frontiers widened, people delved into the esoteric, the spiritual and philosophical. The same thing was going on in the music, fueling the search for the beyond, feeding the endless loop. This is the period in time when complexity and extravagance took center stage. 4-minute songs were forgotten, simple melodies and 4-chord structures were dismissed. Albums need to be epic, conceptual, telling an overarching story, not limited just to a single song. Musical theater played no small part in this transformation. This was the birth of the prog genre. So this is the period that birthed the timeless classics by Yes, Genesis, Rush and Pink Floyd, just to name a few. But really this is barely scratching the surface. Not to mention countless supergroups that appeared for a brief moment to release a song, an EP, or a full record never to be heard again, yet leaving the mark on the music industry. Like mad scientists, musicians of the time were in their labs trying to discover something that has never been done before. At the same time, the world was also experiencing changes. Globalization and worldwide cooperation, including competition, was picking up the pace. There were no unreachable places on the map anymore, and the secrets of the yesteryear could not be kept so tightly. In today's episode, we will look into a subset of guitars that are not of a single brand or shape, but of the era, the very existence of which is outlawed and carries with it an air of mystery and questionable legality. I'm referring to, of course, the lawsuit-era guitars. Are they any good as the originals, or does the myth add to the tangible qualities of these instruments? Let's find out. When you think of any Japanese brand today, chances are they're known for a variety of different industries that sometimes don't intersect in an obvious way. One of such examples would be Sony. They are the electronics company, video production company, a record label, gaming division, including both hardware and software. Or Suzuki, for example. You may be driving one today, but in the 70s you could get a guitar to match your wheels. The drivers of the music market of the period, Fender, Gretsch, Gibson, or Rickenbacker, could not cover all of the demand. At the same time, the prices were not always friendly, so companies all over the world started copying what was available with varying degrees of success. So at the time, you could have a Stratocaster from all over the world, like this Italian example from Melody Guitars.
Objection, immaterial, goes to motor. Overruled.
Harry Rosenblum of the Medley Music became the sole distributor of Japanese-made guitars on the American market. To avoid directly mentioning Japan, the company took the name of a Spanish luthier, Salvador Ibáñez, which later would transform to the Ibanez we know today. At first, this was not noticeable. Not much import or export going on between the countries, no internet to share the news quickly. So for a while, this was a closely kept secret. But the market did turn in favor of the more budget-friendly contender, and the big American companies felt it. Not to mention a multitude of other Japanese brands coming in with practically identical copies. So, as any respecting company would do, Gibson went to court. The lawsuit was filed in 1977. The main issue that they had was the shape of the headstock. The so-called Gibson open book headstock was the basis for this lawsuit. In the end, the lawsuit was settled out of court, and Ibanez replaced the headstock with a revised design. We could say that was that. But in a time frame of a few years, dozens of companies emerged with Fender, Gibson or Rickenbacker copies. So, as the lawsuit pertains only to Ibanez, other brands of the period are often classified as such. Case in point, Pearl Musical Instrument Company. If you think about it today, you immediately think about drums. But in the 1970s, Pearl Musical Instruments Company bought Hayashi Guitar Factory, which was established in Japan in the 1960s. So, from then on, Pearl produced guitars under its own brand. What we have here is a textbook example of a lawsuit-era guitar. This Les Paul copy was made under Pearl brand. It copies the Les Paul Custom, with one visual difference. The neck is bolt-on. Several brands in the period had set necks such as Bernie or Tokai, but mostly you can get bolt-ons with a proud Made in Japan plaque on the back. This example boasts mahogany neck and body with gold hardware, which is visibly worn off, and black lacquer. This instantly conjures up images of a Black Beauty, before custom shop became a thing. This may not be quite visible on the video, but the body has pancake construction. The body is comprised of 2 layers of mahogany. This was a trademark of Gibson in the 1970s, which then was replaced with a one-piece body. This allowed to get away with using thinner wood blanks to save on production costs. Now we can see a bit of a seam line where the lacquer sank. Now let's move on to the neck. It is in worse condition than the body, but I have to tell you, at least now it's playable. Please remove children from the screen. What you're about to see is going to be graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. This was how I got it. As per usual, while looking through the local ads, I came across this beauty. What I saw at first was the 1975-ish in description, and later on the description said, neck break, partial repair. After a little deliberation, I decided to go for it. So this is how I received it. Unfortunately, someone tried to repair the neck with a CA glue. The previous owner said it was not playable, so he just decided to let it go. My first order of business was to scrape all of the visible glue off. Thankfully, with a bit of alcohol, I was able to prepare enough area for the wood glue. Next step was to remove some material from both sides of the neck and inlay with wood splines for structural integrity. As you can see, with a lot of nerves, I was able to get through this process. Now, a year and a half later, I can say that the neck is in playable condition. The only problem is that the lacquer sank at the joint, so I guess the surgery is not over yet. But at the moment it is in quite a good condition. We have 2 humbuckers with Gibson layout, so 2 volumes, 2 tones, and a 3-way switch. The neck has 22 frets with a rosewood fingerboard and 12-inch radius. All in all, I think it's a wonderful example of the lawsuit-era guitar. The weak point that I would point out is the neck pocket. It is way too wide for the neck. The setup needs tweaking a bit, the strings seem to be a little too high. In my opinion, the electronics are outstanding for the age. I used some contact cleaner on the pots, but everything seems to be original. The pickups have an unusual bite to them. You'll hear that in a minute. So let's try to do justice and play a little of everything. So, without further ado, let's get right to it. All in all, I'm totally pleased with this purchase, despite extensive repair that was needed. I guess the question still remains, are Japanese lawsuit-era guitars the holy grail of the guitar world or just old relics? I'd say it depends. They're not synonymous with quality. In case you come across such an example, please look into it before buying. Make sure that the neck is straight, setup is still possible, not to mention electronics. But I do have to say, this example is pretty good. After almost 50 years of being played, the wood is in very good condition. So I'll say it like this, you can find fantastic examples and equally possibly utter firewood. Just get a chance to see it and play it. For the right price, this can be a treasure. So this was my take on lawsuit-era guitars. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Case closed.